show where I offer you judgment-free advice on how to raise value-driven children in a way that's right for your family using the most current scientific research. I'm your host, Dr. Deanna Marie Mason. I'm a certified pediatric nurse practitioner, a published author, and an expert in child development. I'm also the mom of 2 fabulous children, so I know firsthand how much pressure and misinformation is out there, and that's why I'm here. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and settle in, and let's continue our conversation because this is a safe space. You can ask questions and get real, honest answers about how to raise kids in a way that works for your family. Now, this episode is a continuation of another episode on separation anxiety and COVID-19. In the previous episode, we went through how separation anxiety is a completely normal developmental process that occurs in all children at every age. And because we covered all the ages and stages, we had to divide the podcast into 2. If you haven't listened to that podcast, please feel free to go back and listen to it. But if you haven't, it's okay to start with this podcast also, which focuses more on how COVID has influenced separation anxiety in our little ones, and more importantly, what we can do as parents to help our children manage this global pandemic. So, in the last episode, we discussed how separation anxiety displays itself at each age and stage, and slightly went into what we need to do as parents. It's a very complicated topic that we could break down and make a podcast for every single age and stage. But in order to kind of summarize this and put it in a useful way, in case you have children of multiple ages, let's just continue going from there. COVID is making separation anxiety a more complicated process. And mostly this is because we've been spending so much time together as families. And that may make it harder for some of our children to cope with the change of returning to school, of parents going back to work, or even thinking that it's safe to go outside again because we've been told to social distance, to stay away, to wear our masks. And for children who can't understand the complexity of what a global pandemic, a virus means, and even for our adolescents who have the abstract thought and ability to comprehend what that means, it can feel very scary. And as we said in the last episode, separation anxiety is a response to change and the uncomfortable feelings that come with that change, that a child wants to stop or slow down. And so they have this response as a way to try to gain some control over the situation. And in COVID, sadly, no one has control. I think that's probably what this has taught us, is that as much as we like to think that we are in control and in power of what happens to us every day, there are things that are greater that can influence what happens to us. And those concepts are hard for us as adults to manage. They're even more complicated for our kiddos. We know that being apart can be difficult, especially in these uncertain times. So the only thing we can really do as parents is to use this as an opportunity to help ourselves and our children learn and grow. We always have the capacity to develop new ways to cope with change and to manage separation anxiety. And that, I guess, is where I want to focus this podcast today, is on our ability to cope and to change and to learn. And that's what makes us wonderful as humans, is that we have that capacity. And we probably need to reach in deep and really use those skills right now. So let's talk about how we can change, how we can adapt, how we can cope to feel empowered and confront these tough feelings that we have and our children have. That said, it's really important to first recognize that what we're going through is really tough. I don't want to minimize that at all. We need to be honest that COVID has created a change that's scary, it's worrisome, and it can make us sad. Some of us have been touched by real tragedy, losing family members, friends, co-workers. We might have been sick ourselves. We can't ignore the reality and the weight of this situation. And so we also need to recognize that our children are going to feel the same way. They might not express it the same way. They may not be able to be aware of it the same way we are, but the same way it's tough and difficult for us, it's tough and difficult for them. So having that acknowledgement that no one is exempt from this experience is an important place to start. The reality here is that things are always less scary when we know what they are. And so by identifying and labeling our feelings, as well as helping our little ones identify and label their feelings at their developmentally appropriate age and stage, that can be a great place to start working on adjusting and adapting to this situation. The other thing I think we need to begin by acknowledging is that adjusting to changes while still dealing with uncertain situations can also be a struggle, and that's okay. This isn't under control yet. There seems to be peaks and valleys in infection rates. We're unsure of therapies. We don't have a vaccine yet. And so how we deal with this needs to adapt and change as things around us change. In areas where infection rates have lowered, things opened up, it seemed to be more normal, and then infection rates rose again, and tightening in social distancing occurred again. So we need to be aware that what we're doing today may need to change in the future as the situation continues to evolve. And we need to be okay with that uncertainty and that struggle and just accept it as a reality of the situation. Our kiddos, regardless of their age, have probably become somewhat used to their smaller social circles, staying at home, being only with mom and dad and siblings, those types of things. And now that school is starting and some parents are being asked to go back to work, it may be stressful for them to move back into larger circles. And this may be especially true with older children and teens who have some understanding about the risks of getting sick. Smaller children may be uneasy around people again, especially if everyone is wearing masks or wearing the face shields or old behaviors that they used to use to show and express love, like we talked with our toddlers, our 1 to 2 year olds, are prohibited, like hugging, because our little ones who are nonverbal do a lot of physical expression. And if all of a sudden, because of social distancing, we're not allowed to hug grandma anymore, we're not allowed to piggyback with grandpa or cuddle with aunts and uncles, that can feel very odd that those normal behaviors are now being limited. So my point in all of this is to remember that this is a process. Separation anxiety happens normally throughout childhood, and COVID may make it a little bit more intense. So be patient. Allow yourself and your kiddos time and space to adjust. So let's begin by talking about a few suggestions that you can try with your family to help alleviate some of the separation anxiety that is happening now with COVID, and as things start to loosen up and become more, for lack of better terms, normal, even though they're not normal. First of all, for your littlest ones, create a pattern when you leave and when you return so that they can learn to anticipate to let you go when you leave and reconnect when you arrive. If you now have to start going back into the office or Perhaps you're an essential worker that needs to leave for work, but you have been spending more time at home previously because of COVID. It may be difficult for your child to have you go, especially your babies, your 9, 10, 11, 12-month olds. So by having a pattern when you leave and when you return, they can start to know what's going to happen, anticipate it, become familiar with it, create coping mechanisms to manage it, and feel less anxious. So an example of what that may look like could be when you're about ready to leave, give your baby a good 5 or 10-second snuggle with kisses on the forehead, the nose, and the mouth, and then a short rhyme or song as you pass them to their caregiver or who's going to take care of them while you're gone. And then when you return, reverse that process. Start with a rhyme or song so that they hear you first, then kiss them so they can see you visually, and then wrap it all up with that big snuggle again. And so it's almost like an unwinding and a rewinding. And that can be very comforting because you are incorporating all of their senses, but in a nonverbal way. So if they lack the ability to speak, which 9, 10, 11, 12-month-olds normally do, they can still understand the process and participate in it without any problem. So again, that would be starting with a big snuggle, kisses on their forehead, nose, and mouth with a short rhyme or song as you pass them to their caregiver. And when you come back and you see them, but they haven't noticed you yet, you can start with the rhyme or song so they hear you, they become aware of your presence, kiss them so they see that visually in front of them, and then finalize it with a giant hug or snuggle. For your toddlers, your 1 to 3-year-olds, you can do something very similar for them, but allow them to participate with you, because remember, a large part of that toddlerhood is learning how to give love and learning how to get that positive feedback from the other person so they learn to value more positive behavioral interactions with others rather than using negative tantrums, crying, or meltdowns to get the attention of adults. So with our toddlers, you can let them participate by, in the singing part, creating an echo or a repeat back. So you can still do the snuggle and still do the kisses, but instead of having a rhyme or a song that only you control, you can create something that they can simply participate in. So an example of that could be, bye bye baby birdie, and your little one can repeat back, bye bye mommy birdie, or daddy birdie, or auntie birdie, or grandma birdie, or whoever's doing the drop off as you flap your wings goodbye. And that's a mimicking role play that they're pretending to be something else that toddlers love. And then when you return, you can call out, hi, hi, baby birdie, and have your wings open for them to fly into your arms as they say, hi, hi, mommy birdie. And the more they are included and get to give and receive, the more deeply they're going to feel connected with you and secure when you leave and reconnected when you arrive. So with your toddlers, you can continue the same thing that you do with infants. Just create the activity to be more inclusive of them inside of it. For our preschoolers, it's important to remember that they're becoming more independent, but on their own terms. They want to control everything. So something you could try with them would be starting a picture in the morning on a blank piece of paper or a whiteboard, where you start a half picture so they know what you're trying to draw, but you don't finish it. And then while you're gone, they can add in parts during the day. And that will help them feel okay about seeing you go, because they feel connected with you yet, and they have control over how they continue drawing that picture. So maybe you start by drawing part of a house, but you just draw the outside and you leave the picture there and tell them, I want to see what you add to the house today. And they might add in family members, windows, flowers, birds, whatever they think of. And the great part is that when you return, you can sit down with them and take time to share why you started the picture that you did. You might say, I knew I had to be gone from home today, so I wanted to draw home so we could think about all the good times that we've had together here. And then you get to ask them to share what they added to the picture and why. Now, of course, snuggles and kisses are also welcome at this age, so giving them lots of praise and feedback and snuggles also adds to the connection between both of you. But doing this for preschoolers allows them to maintain their independence and feel in control on their terms, but you give them the freedom to do as much as they want, and then reward them with praise and conversation in reconnecting them with them when you get home. If you find your preschoolers, your 3 to 5 year olds, starting to lose control, that's pretty normal when there's some abrupt changes. At 3 to 5 years of age, they think that you are the best thing since sliced bread. They adore you. They idolize you. And so being at home with you and having you so close and so near was just a treasure for them. And having to go off to school, preschool, or having you return to work can be really devastating for them. So be sensitive to that development and why they might be responding so forcefully. So what can you do? The best thing to do with these little ones is to help them learn to gain control over their own bodies. And deep breathing can help them do that. So how do you help your 3 to 5 year old begin learning how to do deep breathing exercises? The best thing to do is get down to their level. Try to get eye to eye with them. That might mean getting on your knees and lead them in the breathing pattern as you do it with them. You can start by saying, I can see that you are feeling something strong inside. Should we breathe together to figure out what it is? That there sets the stage that you acknowledge something's happening in them. Something you see isn't right. You're encouraging them to explore that feeling and showing that you're there with them while they do that. And more importantly, you're not overstepping and giving them the name of that emotion. You're allowing them to do that so they can start to connect what they're feeling with the abstract idea of the word, which will be very important later in their development. So you're doing many, many important things with that simple statement. I can see that you're feeling something strong inside of you. Should we breathe together to figure out what it is? Then you instruct them to breathe in the good through their nose and blow out the bad through their mouth. Now, why is this important? And are they actually going to breathe through their nose or mouth? I don't know. But what it does is it focuses their mind and their intention on their physical body. It grounds them in the moment. It doesn't make them search after a name of a feeling that they can't identify yet. It doesn't force them into anything other than, I'm in my body and I control my body. And so telling them to breathe in the good, fresh air through their nose, and breathe out the bad feelings through their mouth makes them feel like they are cleansing themselves and are focused on their body. Again, maintaining them in control of the situation, not you coming in to save them. You want to walk them through this process of breathing 3 to 5 breaths and then check in again. You can stop and say, How are you feeling? Is that emotion as strong as before? That's an easy yes or no answer for them. Yes, it's still as strong. Let's keep breathing some more. We need more time. Or no, I feel a little bit better. Then you can respond with, great. How do you feel? And at that point, you might be able to say, is the feeling good, bad, sad, scary? Give them a couple options to choose from, but don't push. The greatest thing about this activity that you're teaching them is that you're reminding them that they can calm themselves at any time by slowing down, being present in their bodies, and just taking some deep breaths. It will be amazing when you see the empowerment that comes to your little one with this skill, because they're going to learn to use it not just now while they're dealing with separation anxiety and the difficulties of COVID, but they're going to be able to use it throughout their entire childhood and adolescence, which will have wonderful, wonderful effects on their ability to manage difficult situations. Now, for our older school-age children, these kiddos might try to hide their fears in an attempt to be big or strong. And that is completely normal. So I always like to encourage parents, if they don't see any overt reactions of separation anxiety, just to do a check-in and let them know that you have fears too, because everybody does. So maybe the first day of school or when you have to go to work, you can, the night before, the morning during breakfast, say, hey, this is a really big change we have going on here. Whew, I don't know how you're feeling, but I'm a little nervous about, leaving home and going to work and being away from you because we've been together for so long. How do you feel? And just that kind of self-disclosure gives them permission to share their thoughts or feelings without thinking that it's babyish to be scared or nervous. Now, on the other side, you might have some school-age children having some regression because of separation anxiety. They might repick up carrying a security object, sucking their thumb, clinging to you, needing assistance with things that they previously had mastered. That's not uncommon to see regression in kids when they're suffering from severe anxiety. And in those cases, it's very important to provide reassurance, extra comfort, and letting it slide a bit is okay. But you need to be aware that if it becomes a significant pattern where they are regressing and not going back to normal in any situation, it might be time to reach out to a professional for some assistance, because some kids find they get blocked. And as much as we as parents want to support them and try to help them through, they might need some additional resources that come from professionals. So if you see your little one starting to wet the bed again on a pretty consistent basis, that no matter what type of support you're providing at home is not changing, or they start to become aggressive, or they might be exceptionally weepy and clingy where they just refuse to leave your side, that's a sign that you might need to reach out for some professional help. And I just want to mention that for the safety and security of your child and your family. So even if your child is doing some regression, some things that you can do to see if you can help them through that before having to reach out to professionals is to really focus on empowerment. Because in the end, the reason why they regress is because they do not think they can cope with what is happening, and they just want it to stop and go away. They want to go back to a time that they felt secure. And so if you can get them feeling empowered about their ability to have some control, that can alleviate some of that anxiety. So because they're school age and they're teachable and they are concrete thinkers and they love to follow directions and they love to learn, things that we can do as a family is showing them the best way to wash their hands and when to do it. Show them how to sneeze and cough into their elbow. Give them examples on ways to know that they're properly socially distancing. And think up crazy and kooky creative ways to still connect with others while we have to wear a mask and social distance. Things like creating a silly dance or making the heart sign with your hands, or maybe having a funny walk or a clap that you can echo back to other people that you love. We want to help them be creative about managing their lives and still being safe. So if they have a birthday coming up and you can't have an in-person birthday party, maybe you can do a Zoom birthday party or a drive-by birthday party where you have people go by outside your window or your front door and you get to wave and say happy birthday. Or maybe it's retaking the lost art of letter writing. Who knows? There's so many options, but the whole point is giving kids the empowerment to take charge of the things that they can to protect themselves and move ahead in life can be a way to reduce the anxiety or any regression that may happen. That said, if you find the regression to be significant, consistent, and not getting any better, please reach out to a healthcare professional or your pediatrician or nurse practitioner to help you get some assistance. In the end, the more school-age children feel in control, the more likely they will be to be in touch with their feelings rather than run away from them. It's still a great idea to gather these kiddos in your arms and snuggle them as much as they'll let you, to reassure them. And for me as a parent, I always love to hold them in my arms and feel them melt into me. And I know when I feel that melting into me, that's when they feel safe and are ready to open up. And I can ask some of those gently probing questions. Now, be sure to praise them and recognize them for all the work that they're doing for themselves and for others. And that will continue to motivate them to adapt their routines to fit with what's currently happening. And lastly, we need to talk about our teens. They probably have the biggest range of expression on how they manage separation anxiety. Depending on their cognitive and emotional development, that may range from acting like nothing is happening to thinking that the world's coming to an end. And you might be wondering, why is there such a variance in response? And it's because our teens are trying to figure out who they are, where they fit into this world, which is a tremendous task alone. And now COVID has made this even more difficult. All the things that teens are supposed to do, trying new looks and fashion, hanging out away from parents, chilling with their friends, being in romantic relationships, exploring the world as they work on finding themselves, has all been upended by COVID. None of those things is supposed to be happening right now. And so they're kind of caught in a suspense animation where they feel the internal drive to do these things, but the external world is saying, no, you can't. It's hard to explore and try new things and have new experiences when your mobility is limited, when you can't go to concerts or restaurants or hang out in malls or parks with your friends, and a mask is mandated and the number of people getting together is limited. And then on top of that, teens have to somehow overcome the tremendous sense of insecurity that they have trying out all those new things until they find themselves. And at the bottom of that insecurity is fear. This pandemic makes that fear worse because there is an actual danger present in the community. Where normally the fear is making a fool out of yourself or having people remember that you made a mistake or you had a bad haircut. Now we have a fear of true illness. And just as an example, COVID is sexually transmitted and kissing can spread the infection. So those innocent, sweet first kisses that normally happen during adolescence, with all the strange and exciting feelings that occur with that activity, are now shadowed with the risk of getting sick. I cannot think of a more difficult time to be a teen than right now. And that said, there's the egocentrism of adolescence that keeps our kiddos thinking about this from their perspective. They might not have it on their mind continually, but particularly our older teens may carry the burden of those realities in their interactions with others. They might choose to do it in two ways. One, by becoming a complete hand-washing, mask-wearing, social distancing stronghold where they refuse to break any norms because they want to do everything perfect. Or they might go the other route where they wear their mask on their arms, they get together with their friends, they hang out in large groups, and they go to parties because they just can't deal with it. They just want to feel fine, and so they push it to the side and ignore it. Both of those reactions are normal. Both of them have their risks. The first one has a huge impact on their social development, their emotional development, because fear is driving that. And the second one has a tremendous effect on their physical health and their risks. So we can't ignore our teens and how they're managing separation anxiety and COVID. So taking this all together, it's normal that anxiety is going to rise for our teens. We might see them retreating into their digital lives more as a coping mechanism, or perhaps they just throw up their hands and give up on the journey of finding themselves while this is happening. They might just stall. They physically are getting older chronologically, but developmentally they're just staying where they're at because they think, what's the purpose? I know some teens have postponed university entrance, hoping that in a year's time they'll be able to do things the way they imagined them. Some have stopped doing sports because they're afraid of risks. Others have stopped playing in musical groups to try to manage their anxiety. And as parents, we have to recognize that our teen has picked up on what's happening in the world, and they feel the weight of this pandemic on top of all the normal adolescent issues that they're dealing with. And it is impossible to shield them from what's going on or stop the expectation of their development until a vaccine or a treatment's found. So our job is to show them that life goes on, and sometimes for better and sometimes for worse, and helping them build resilience to manage these difficulties while still moving forward in their own development is going to be key. We don't know how long this is going to last. We can't expect them to give up years of their lives waiting. So we have to teach them how to be resilient and how to keep moving forward. The great news in all this is that teens have abstract thoughts, so they can think about the consequences of their actions before they act. This is a protective mechanism for them. Knowing that germs and viruses can be spread through the air helps them understand the importance of the mask and hand washing. Social distancing, while being the opposite of what teens like to do, is also understandable to them because they understand how viruses can spread in the air. Beyond these basic concepts to keep them safe, the important part is to help them see that this situation is only temporary. Understandably, it can feel like an eternity to them, but we have to harness that skill of abstract thought to keep them focused on what will happen when this is all over. I like to remind teens that no matter how tough and bleak this feels, for all the missing dances, proms, games, graduations, college visits, freshers' weeks at uni, all those wonderful things, they need to remember that the roaring 20s happened after the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. There was a fantastic, fun, exciting world on the other side of the last global pandemic. I share this with them to give them hope, to keep their perspective open, and to lower the risk of them throwing in the towel and thinking that their life is over. Because in the end, our job as parents to our teens is to help them recognize that this is just the first challenge of their life. And they have the skills to meet and overcome whatever they face, because we are there to support them in that process and journey. We're not saying that it's going to be easy, and it might not turn out perfect the first time, but with their perseverance, they can get where they want to go and find a way to do what they need to do, because they are capable and nothing can stop them. There are always ways to manage. So by supporting their initiative, encouraging them to manage changes, celebrating their successes, and helping them plan after they've had a failure on how they can try again, is how we build their resiliency and lessen their anxiety. Our teens will know that we are with them through thick and thin, and that we are there to bolster their confidence, to reach beyond their anxiety, and to continue growing and moving forward. So in this episode, we've really focused on how separation anxiety can be exacerbated or made worse by COVID and what that may look like in each age and stage. Obviously, I haven't been able to cover everything in every range. And so if you have any questions that you'd like answered, please don't hesitate to send me an email at deanna@deannamariemason.com. You can also find more about COVID and other topics related to separation anxiety on my website at proactiveparenting.com. Take a look at my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram page. You can find me by searching for my name, Deanna Marie Mason, to find out more information about COVID and other resources to help your family during this trying time. Finally, if you're interested in buying any of my books or online courses, they're also available on my website, proactiveparenting.com. Thank you so much for listening to this 2-part series on separation anxiety and COVID. I hope you found it both useful now during the pandemic, but also just generally related to the development of your child and how to parent them in a more effective, proactive way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends and let anyone else you know who may benefit from it so they can learn with you. I think that's all for me for right now. I am Dr. Deanna Marie Mason, signing off, and we'll see each other soon. Take care.